Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree. Hi if you're new here, or hey if you've been here before. Today I'm going to be doing another recommendations video because I feel like a lot of people I've been talking to lately have kind of been saying that they've been having a hard time either getting into the mood to read or finding the energy to be creative, and I totally get that because I've been having my fair share of those days as well. So today I wanted to kind of offer some fun, light-hearted reads that I think could help get you out of reading slumps, or at least find something that you might enjoy. I'm going to preface this by first saying that contrary to popular belief, there's not actually many contemporary novels in this list, so I apologize if you are here thinking you're getting a list of contemporaries. I only have 2. The rest are all fantasy, and I didn't mean for that to happen, but I realized as I was perusing my shelves that I really only read hard-hitting contemporaries, and those are probably the opposite of what everyone wants right now. But I actually had a decent amount of fun fantasy books, and they range from high fantasy all the way to like urban fantasy. So I figured I would still share what I have and maybe open you guys up to some newer reads that you have not heard of before. So without further ado, let's get into the pile. So I am going to start this list off by talking about the 2 contemporaries. And the first one is definitely super underrated. I hear no one talk about this ever. And that would be Kill the Boy Band by Goldie Moldavsky. I hope I'm saying her last name right. I think I am. But this I actually got in a book box that unfortunately is no longer up and running. And it's sad because I do think they had so many unique picks in their book box and a lot of underrated books. So I got this. I had no idea what it was about. And essentially it is following a group of teenage girls who are trying to go to a concert, and they are obsessed with this boy band, and they end up kind of getting a chance to kind of corner one essentially. I will leave it at that because I don't think it's worth knowing the rest of this book because it's such a wild ride. What I will definitely say is that it is super fun and lighthearted. It's almost ludicrous in the making of this book. Like, it's definitely not something that would, well, you would hope it would not be something that actually would happen in real life, but just like the events that unfold, you're kind of like, oh my god, like, are they going there? Are they doing this? Oh my god, did that just happen? And it was so fun and such a fun time. I will definitely say if you grew up either as like a hardcore fangirl of NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys or like 98 Degrees, any of those boy bands, or more recently if you were a huge One Direction fan, I would say this could be for you. This is definitely in the vein of One Direction, and I do think it was inspired by the authors or just in general the love for One Direction. So I would recommend this one. It's a fun time. I'm also going to apologize because I am washing my clothes right now, and I thought the washer was going to be cooperative and like almost be done, but unfortunately I'm running out of time today and I need to film this now, and we just gotta go with what we gotta go with. Anyway, the second book that I'm going to recommend is one that is pretty beloved to most people, but that is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. So this obviously has some depth to it. There is some parts that could be considered not lighthearted, but I think the overall feel of this is it is a fun sort of rom-com, sort of just romantic contemporary book where you are following a gay teen who is coming out and trying to, you know, fall in love with someone, and it's just super cute and endearing. While I sure think that there could be parts that could be better, like every book, I absolutely love this. I read this in probably a day, actually. I was so excited, and then I saw the movie, and the movie is also very endearing. So this is kind of a 2-parter. You can totally read this book and then go watch the movie if you want to keep up those feel good. I definitely cried when I was watching the movie because I was just so happy. So obviously, if you have not read this one, or if you just want to reread, I would recommend this. The next 2 books on this list are going to be middle grade reads, and the one you can kind of argue might not be middle grade, at least when you progress, but we'll get into that. So without further ado, the book that I'm going to recommend is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So the reason I picked this is because I think the early books of Harry Potter are obviously very nostalgic, but they're also very innocent and fun and lighthearted because obviously the kids are much younger and they are middle grade age. I would particularly recommend, if you do have it, the illustrated edition because it adds just that extra layer to the book and it gives you that fun nostalgic vibe as well. And I don't know, I just feel like Harry Potter can always get me out of a reading slump. It's always something I love to return to, and I have such a fun time reading it. And like I said, the illustrated edition is something that adds to the story. Even though we all know, we've probably all watched the movies, we've all read the books, it's just an extra depth. But I will definitely say, like, if you're rereading the series in general, I think you can appreciate it for what it is. But the first book, and maybe the second book as well, still have that nostalgic innocence to it, and I think it could very much help in the dark times we're facing. On a similar note to Harry Potter, I would recommend Percy Jackson and the Olympians. So this one actually I did not read as a kid or a teenager, and I only read them about 2 or 3 years ago at this point. And while they probably missed the boat a little bit for me, because I think it was something I would have loved as a kid, but I never got the opportunity to read them, I can still appreciate them for what they were. They were absolutely fun. They were very similar to Harry Potter in some ways, and I think that's why if you either read them already or you like Harry Potter and you want some of those vibes, Percy Jackson is a great alternative to that. If you don't know anything about it, it's essentially where a boy ends up finding that he is a demigod, and he goes to camp and they have to try to solve all of these problems. It's a bit of the chosen one trope, as well as just a very fun adventure story. And I think easily all 5 of the books, I think there's 5 of the books, all of them are easy to read and easy to get into, and they probably wouldn't take any time at all, but they would put you in a fun and exciting mood, especially if you aren't in that already. The next book I have is going to be an adult paranormal romance / urban fantasy, and that would be Dead into Dark by Charlaine Harris. So I've mentioned this book a ton on my channel because I just absolutely adore True Blood, and I already read the first book of this series, and it is just such a fun time. I think the world is our world, so it's relatively fleshed out, but I love the incorporation of the vampires and the other magical creatures in this world, as well as I like how Suki is trying to figure out how she's part of it, and, you know, her interest in a vampire and just the underworld that they create. I think it's well written, and I can't say for certain, this isn't a book that I'm taking like full seriously. So there's definitely books out there where you can tell like the author's intent was to be serious, to create like a really good book. And I don't know if that is what the author set out to do, but I just have so much fun reading it. It's lighthearted in a way, it's easy to understand and absorb, and you can just kind of pick it up, like read a chapter or two, put it down, and come back a few days later and keep going. Like, you're not necessarily missing anything when you put it down, but there's enough there that you want to keep picking it back up, or even just in your spare time to read it. It's really fun. It's like a staple at this point. And again, similar to both Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, even though I probably wouldn't recommend the Percy Jackson movie, this has an entire TV show. It's definitely a whole different ball game, the TV show, where this I find is very fun, at least for the first few books, and I haven't finished the series, so I can't say if they all continue in that manner, but the TV show is definitely more serious and a bit darker than the book has been so far. So if you are enjoying this and you don't want to jump into the darker stuff, I would say maybe wait to the TV show till you're in a better headspace, but definitely pick this up in the meantime. The next 2 books I have in this recommendations list kind of go together, but they're also their own separate entities, and that is the Lady Janie series by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. So the first book is My Lady Jane, the second book is My Plain Jane, and sometime I think in June, My Calamity Jane is coming out. Like I said, they are technically part of a series, but they stand on their own. So My Lady Jane follows Lady Jane Grey, who was a true historic figure in real life, and kind of follows her short-lived 9-day stay as queen. In real life, Jane was beheaded. In this book, you kind of have a different possible take with some magical elements in it, and I really, really loved it. I think the humor in this is so great. I love the sort of magic that they've incorporated, and I also do, it's personally for me, I like this. I know not everyone does, but the authors break the fourth wall quite a bit and will interrupt and kind of like give their 2 cents, and I like that because I think it just adds this really fun element to it. My Plain Jane is another sort of retelling, and it follows Jane Eyre. So basically, instead of following like the book character, it follows Jane Eyre, who is an actual real person and supposedly inspires Charlotte Bronte to write Jane Eyre. And this has the magical element of ghosts. So Jane can see ghosts, and it's just kind of all these shenanigans that Jane and Charlotte end up getting into, and how she influences Charlotte to write a book about her. I really, really, really liked both of them. Also, I highly recommend the audiobooks for both because they're so well done, and again, so much fun reading and listening to both of them. I did read this physically. I listened to this on audiobook, and I'm so excited for the third installment. Like I said, that's going to come out, I think, in June, but be on the lookout. And if you haven't, like I said, super funny, super endearing, and probably these would be the most fun books that I have on this list that I'm mentioning today. So the last three books are high fantasy young adults, and I picked them because I also think that they have, well, maybe some serious undertones here and there. For the most part, they're just really fun and easily digestible. The first on this list is Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller. So this follows a female pirate who is a princess and is trying to kind of prove herself to her father, as well as trying to kind of figure out her past. And there are pirates, there are mermaids, and there's love, and it's just a really, really fun time. Again, recommend the audiobook if you're looking for an audiobook to read, but otherwise the book itself is really great. I think the author does a good job trying to describe the world as well as the elements and kind of keeping this fun, fast pace throughout both books. It's a duology. The second book is Daughter of the Siren Queen, and they're both a great time. Easy books, pretty quick to read, and would recommend. The next book on this list is one that I just reread, so I'm fully confident in this recommendation, and that is War by Cora Carmack. So this book is probably on this list the one with the most serious undertones that kind of creep in and out. There are some political intrigue, there is some hints that people are very brutal in this world and are mistreated, but at the core of it, this is a high fantasy love story. Cora Carmack is known to write primarily romance books, especially new adult romance, and this is the first and only book I've read for her. I'm not a big romance fan, so I can't compare her romance books, but this book, I can tell she writes romance because the romance, I think, is very well done. It follows Aurora, who is a princess of, I think it's Pavlon. I could be wrong, but I think that's how what the city's named is. But she's a princess, and she is what's supposed to be a stormling. Stormlings are the ones with all the power. They are able to control storm magic and call and calm storms at will. But unfortunately, Aurora does not have that magic. So she ends up getting into a betrothal through another prince who does have magic, and she is kind of planning on using him to be able to keep her kingdom safe and calm, and thinking that she has power when really it is just her husband who has the power. This ends up going awry when Aurora doesn't think she likes the prince that she's about to be married to, so she kind of hatches a plan to sneak out of the castle and run away with this group of storm chasers, essentially. And from there, there's a lot of magic and romance and fun times. I think, like I said, while the tones sometimes you can tell that there are darker tones, the first book is just so fun and exciting, and it's just so endearing. Like, I love the love story that ends up unfolding in this, and I'm not a big person of wanting to see like the love story come true. Like, I do like more of like the world and the wars and all that kind of stuff, but I adore this love story. It's also one of the rare books that goes against things that I typically don't like. There is some miscommunication and like withholding truths. And there's also the main love interest who kind of calls the girl by a nickname, a pet name, without her permission. But there's kind of a reason why the pet name irks her, and I think that's justifiable. So even though those are two things that I typically don't like to see in books, I think it works really well in this. So yeah, I'm always proved wrong, but I definitely recommend this if you guys are more into fantasy, but maybe you want to dabble in a little bit of romance. This is a great start. And the last book on this list is another young adult fantasy, and that is Caravelle by Stephanie Garber. So Caravelle is another huge one that's big on Instagram and BookTube and pretty much all over the place. It blew up. If you haven't seen this or one of its variations on the covers, then I feel like you've probably been living under a rock. But if you have been living under that rock, then let me explain. Caravelle follows two sisters who end up trying to escape their abusive father. Like I said, a little bit of a tone there, but it's not as played out as much as I would have liked to see in this fantasy. But anyway, they're trying to escape their abusive father, so they get an invitation to visit Caravelle that is performed by a man named Legend, and essentially it's kind of like a few days or a week-long event where nothing is as it seems, and you're kind of playing a game, you're trying to figure out the end of the game, and Legend puts all of this together. So you're following Scarlet in the first book. The second book follows her sister Tella, and the third book follows both of them. But for this book, you're following Scarlet as she's kind of wandering through Caravelle and trying to figure out what's true, what's real, what's not, and also kind of falling in love for the first time now that she's away and on her own. So that is why I would recommend this, because it is, you kind of just get swept up in the frenzy, even though there's definitely a lot of flaws in this. I would say it's definitely a young adult romance, young adult fantasy romance, I guess, to be more specific, but it's insta-lovey. It's, you feel like sometimes the main character is so stupid and they definitely make actions and choices that you would be like, no, you should not do that. But I was able to get past that, and I still enjoyed this book for what it was. As I mentioned, it's fast-paced. I think if you're not looking too hard, the twists and the turns are very fun, even though they might be a little predictable. And I just really was blown away when the first time I read this. It was a debut, and like I said, while there was definitely room to grow, I think it was a really fun debut. And that's why I'm putting it on this list, because for instance, this is my justification. If you're like me and you have read The Night Circus, or you were recommended The Night Circus, The Night Circus is an adult fantasy novel where you're following two magicians and kind of sort of a love story, but really just like their lives unfolding and how like their actions have caused all of these other events to unfold. It's very deep, it's very heavy, and the writing style is absolutely beautiful, but sometimes I feel like you can get bogged down by it. This book got compared to The Night Circus as like the young adult version of The Night Circus. And I don't agree at all. I don't think they're anything alike, except for the fact that there's like this circus magic theme. And very loosely at that. But because if you feel like, you know, you thought you would like The Night Circus and you did feel like that it was weighed down or it wasn't like whimsical as you thought it might be, then just jump over to here. It's different. It's not the same as A Night Circus, but it's definitely whimsical. It's fun and fancy free, and it's just kind of what you need when you're feeling down. So that's that choice. Alright, well that is my recommendations for lighthearted, fun reads that can help you get through some tough times, and I hope that if you pick any of these off of my list, that you will just enjoy them for what they are. Obviously, some of these books are going to have problems. They're not going to be for everyone, and I did try to pick a wide enough variety that you might not have read them already, or you might have been on the fence about them, but overall, the main theme that they have in common is they are fun and easy to read. So, with that said, I hope that you guys enjoy any reading that you have coming up, and until next time, I'll see you then. Bye!